Dante's Purgatorio, Canto 5. Those who died by violence but repentant. Buon Conte di Monfeltro, La Pia. I had already from those shades departed, and followed in the footsteps of my guide, when from behind, pointing his finger at me, one shouted, "See, it seems as if shone not the sunshine on the left of him below, and like one living seems he to conduct him." Mine eyes I turned at utterance of these words, and saw them watching with astonishment, but me, and the light which was broken. "Why doth thy mind so occupy itself," the master said, "that thou thy pace dost slacken? What matters it to thee what here is whispered? Come after me, and let the people talk. Stand like a steadfast tower that never wags its top for all the blowing of the winds. For evermore the man in whom is springing thought upon thought removes from him the mark, because the force of one the other weakens." What could I say in answer but, "I come"? I said it somewhat with that colour tinged which makes a man of pardon sometimes worthy. Meanwhile, along the mountain-side across, came people in advance of us a little, singing the Miserere verse by verse. When they became aware I gave no place for passage of the sunshine through my body, they changed their song into a long hoarse "Ho!" and two of them in form of messengers ran forth to meet us, and demanded of us, "Of your condition make us cognizant." And said my master, "You can go your way and carry back again to those who sent you, that this one's body is of very flesh." If they stood still because they saw his shadow, as I suppose, enough is answered them, him let them honour, it may profit them. Vapours enkindled sigh never so swiftly at early nightfall cleaved the air serene, nor at the set of sun the clouds of August, but upward they turned in briefer time, and on arriving with the others wheeled towards us like troops that run without a rein. "This folk that presses unto us is great, and cometh to implore thee," said the poet. "So still go onward, and in going listen. O soul that goest to beatitude with the same members wherewith thou wast born," shouting they came, "a little stay thy steps, look if thou ever hast any of us seen, so that o'er yonder thou bear news of him. Ah, why dost thou go on? Ah, why not stay? Long since we are all slain by violence, and sinners even to the last hour. Then did a light from heaven admonish us, so that both penitent and pardoning forth from life we issued reconciled to God, who with desire to see him stirs our hearts." And I, "Although I gaze into your faces, no one I recognize. But if may please you aught I have power to do, ye well-born spirits, speak ye, and I will do it. By that peace which, following the feet of such a guide, from world to world makes itself sought by me." And one began, "Each one has confidence in thy good offices without an oath. Unless I cannot cut off they I will. Whence I, who speak alone before the others, pray thee, if ever thou dost see the land that twixt Romagna lies and that of Charles, thou be so courteous to me of thy prayers in Fano, that they pray for me devoutly, that I may purge away my grave offences. From thence was I, but the deep wounds through which issued the blood wherein I had my seat would dwelt me in the bosom of Antenore. There where I thought to be the most secure, there as he of Este had it done, who held me in hatred far beyond what justice willed. But if towards the mirror I had fled, and I was overtaken at Oriaco, I should still be o'er yonder where men breathe. I ran to the lagoon, and reeds and mire did so entangle me I fell, and saw there a lake made from my veins upon the ground." Then said another, "Ah, be that desire fulfilled that draws thee to the lofty mountain, as thou with pious pity aidest mine. I was of Montefeltro, and am Buonaconte. Giovanna, nor none other cares for me. Hence among these I go with downcast thought." And I to him, What violence or what chance led thee astray so far from Campaldino, that never has thy sepulture been known?" "Oh," he replied, "at Casentino's foot a river crosses named Arciano, born above the Hermitage in Apennine. There where the name thereof becometh void did I arrive, pierced through and through the throat, fleeing on foot and bloodying the plain. There my sight lost I, and my utterance ceased in the name of Mary, and thereat I fell, and tenantless my flesh remained. Truth will I speak, repeat it to the living. God's angel took me up, and he of hell shouted, 'O thou from heaven, why dost thou rob me?' Thou bearest away the eternal part of him for one poor little tear that takes him from me, but with the rest I'll deal in other fashion. Well knowest thou how in the air is gathered that humid vapour which to water turns, soon as it rises where the cold doth grasp it. He joined that evil will which aye seeks evil to intellect, and moved the mist and wind by means of power which his own nature gave. Thereafter, when the day was spent, the valley from Pratomagno to the great yoke covered with fog, and made the heaven above intent, so that the pregnant air to water changed. Down fell the rain, and to the gullies came whatever of it tolerated not. And as it mingled with the mighty torrents, towards the royal river with such speed it headlong rushed, that nothing held it back. My frozen body near unto its outlet the robust Archean found, and into Arno thrust it, and loosened from my breast the cross I made of me, when agony overcame me. It rolled me on the banks and on the bottom, then with its booty covered and begirt me. Ah, when thou hast returned into the world, and rested thee from thy long journeying, after the second followed the third spirit, do thou remember me, who am the Pia. Siena made me, unmade me Marema. He knoweth it, who had encircled first, espousing me, my finger with his gem." End of Canto 5 of Dante's Purgatorio. So in this canto, Dante and Virgil are still making up the mountain when they come across a series of spirits that notice that Dante has a shadow, unlike anybody else here in Purgatorio. So it's a pretty telling sign for Dante. It's going to make it pretty easy for everyone to recognize who he is. This group is actually singing a hymn, and the hymn is the Miserere Me, have mercy on me. And so two things you're seeing a lot of, a consistent theme running through Purgatorio already. And we first discussed this with Utica in the early cantos of Purgatorio. Joy and singing in the form of a prayer. Almost every level of the Purgatorio, each one of these people has a prayer. So whereas each level, each room of hell, of the Inferno, had a punishment, every room in Purgatorio has a prayer. It has a prayer specific to them. So for these people, those who died unshriven, meaning those who died without having received absolution, remembering in the Catholic Church, you have to have your last rites. Otherwise, you go into death unconfessed, which chances hell. So these people here repented at the last minute, but their circumstances are different than the indolent in the last canto. With the indolent, they actually had the opportunity, and they just put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off. They weren't pressed with anything particular at the time of their death. Here, these people died in blood, basically. They died violently. And right before they died, in this moment of violence, you could say the violence opened their eyes, and they actually did repent internally, even if they didn't have a chance to receive formal confession or absolution. They did open their eyes and repent and ask pardon, not just of themselves, but of the sins of others against them in their dying moments. So, this is their consequence. Go about singing the Miserere. However, there is a sort of punishment with them that counterbalances things. Because they died in haste, because they died in violence, they move about in haste. Notice how they're running from place to place. They're quickly running to let the others know, hasty to let the others know about Dante. And so their purgatory reflects their life as usual. There's three of them. The middle person confessing is of the most interest. The first person simply lets us know that he died at the steps of a convent. The third one simply lets us know that he's Pio de Toleme, that he is betrothed. But the one in the middle is the most interesting. He died in a bloodbath. He died in the middle of violence and turmoil. But at his last moment, he prayed to Mary. And when he prayed to Mary, after running off into a field and bleeding to death, and he was praying to Mary, the angel of God took him up, and it pissed the devil off. The devil screams and throws a tantrum that he was robbed of a soul, that this soul belonged to him. And so he causes a massive storm and floods. The plain where Buonaconte, this second person, dies. And so it's a beautiful imagery you have at the end of his story, that he must have folded his arms in the form of a cross right before he died, along with his prayer to Mary, so signs of penitence. And so the devil, in the ending of his story here, floods the plain so much that it causes his hands to be shaken off from having formed the cross. So it's, even though that doesn't change the outcome of this Buonaconte's fate, he still makes it to purgatory. It's the devil's perception that he still gets one last dig. And isn't that beautiful and symbolic of the devil? So often the devils can't affect the outcome of the salvation of a soul as much as he would like. In the end, we know the devil loses in end times literature. So all the devil can really do, he can never win, but he can make people as miserable as possible. He can never win, but he can take petty shots. So it should not be overlooked that this is symbolic of this last sentence in Buonaconte's story. He couldn't win. He couldn't actually take Buonaconte's soul, but he can make a petty move in the end by shaking off his already dead body's arms in the form of a cross.